You are looking at 6 large relief panels that are carved out of gypsum. Each of them is 12 feet or so tall. And these would have decorated the rooms of the palace of King Ashurnasirpal II of ancient Assyria. He ruled in the 9th century BC. And you can tell he's the king first because he has a far fancier robe than any other character we're looking at here. He has a kind of double garment with a robe and then a kind of cloak over the top of it with elaborate fringe and elaborate decoration. If we got closer, one of the things you'd be able to see is that there are actually small carvings carved into the edge of the fringe, and that's meant to symbolize to you that the robe was actually embroidered, and those carvings are meant to represent the embroidery. He's being followed behind. He's with this winged figure. Usually we call him a winged genie. The genie has some of the most fabulous musculature that you could hope to see. He has incredibly well-muscled legs. He's carrying a small bucket in his left hand, and in his right hand he holds what most people interpret as a date palm spathe. So date palms are an incredibly common plant in Mesopotamia. They grow very well in heat and in brackish water, such as the Tigris and Euphrates produce. And they produce delicious, succulent, sweet dates, so they were a major crop of the ancient world. They produce best if you hand pollinate them. And so what the genie seems to have is a bucket with pollen in it, and then he's using this spathe to reach into the bucket, get the pollen, and then touch the pollen to what would be the fruit of the date palm. What you're seeing here when he touches the date palm spathe to the head of the king is that he's essentially saying the king represents the tree of life for Assyria, the king represents fertility for Assyria. It is from the king that all fertility, all blessings, all bounty come. So behind the king, in relief number 1, this is a representation of one of the king's attendants. It is a representation of a eunuch, and you can tell that because while it's male, you can tell he doesn't have a beard, whereas these other characters have magnificent, curly, unbelievably well-coiffed beards. Our eunuch doesn't have a beard. He has a kind of fleshier face, fleshier cheeks, somewhat elongated fingers. Eunuchs were highly desirable as attendants in the royal court because they were considered to be non-threatening. Now, our other reliefs, as we move to numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6, are various representations of these winged genies. We're standing in front of number 3 right now, who's another winged genie with another bucket of pollen and another date palm spathe. Genie number 4 also has a bucket. One of the things that's interesting to me about genie number 4 is that he doesn't have the wings. He's not as elaborate, and that's because he probably, within the original decoration, this panel stood in a door jamb, and so it was just a panel that they didn't have enough room to put the full representation of the genie, so he's a kind of squished genie. 5 and 6 are much more elaborate genies. 5 has the full wings and has the great musculature. 6 is particularly interesting because here you see 6, the winged genie with his bucket and his date palm spathe, but now fertilizing an actual tree. And so one of the things I love about how our reliefs are hung here and what we can work with here is to say that we see the same gesture with the genie fertilizing the king and the genie fertilizing the tree, and we can understand the correspondence that's being made between the king and the tree of life and the very powerful symbolic message that's being sent.